so much, Brian. We'll see you then. But we want to keep you around as well for this next interview so we can all take some time to travel back to the 80s right here in the Triad.
I mean, this is so cool. Scott Leftwich, he owns a 1980s arcade-themed Airbnb in Winston-Salem.
Yeah, it's typically an 80s history museum. It's got vinyl, it's got cool movies, and lots of video games.
And guess what? Our next guest is here to tell us all about it. So we'd like to welcome Scott Leftwich. He's joining us live. Scott, we've been looking forward to this. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. So tell me the inspiration behind opening up this 80s themed arcade Airbnb. How did it all get started?
Well, my wife and I have stayed at some Airbnbs throughout the country, and I've collected and restored classic arcade games for 25 years. And I don't know, there wasn't really a lightning strike moment. It just kind of sort of happened. We thought, well, you know, we could do this and it sounds like fun, and I think people would really enjoy it because the games, like the arcade, I have well over 100 machines, and it's a 25-year collection, and I just think that you know, these games inspired an entire generation. And
wow.
I think now more than ever, you know, people are looking for something fun to do, and it just sounded like a fun thing to do. So we launched it about 6 weeks ago, and it's been a lot of fun so far.
I mean, I can only imagine. We can see that it looks like you're back in time at an actual arcade that might have been in one of those malls that's going on. So what else can people experience while they're staying there other than playing those games?
Oh gosh, there's a lot. The 80s themed bedroom, which is where guests will stay. There's just lots of 80s vintage memorabilia, a vintage stereo stocked with vinyl. There's a VHS library. People can watch movies. Just so much to do. And of course, guests also have access to every game console ever made from the beginning to CD platforms, which is something else I collected through the years. So it is truly a time machine, and I know people are going to love it. And the people that have been just have been at a loss for words. It is a true 80s experience like no other.
It certainly looks that way. Scott, this is Brian. I tell you what, this speaks to me like you would not believe. And I'm glad that you mentioned that you have some movies on VHS. That's really, really cool. Speaking of nostalgia, I consider myself kind of an arcade rat back in the 80s. There was a bowling alley I used to go to and saw a lot of those very much vintage games that you had there. You said you mentioned over 100 games. First of all, what are some of the classic games that you have available? And are there some games that you would like to get your hands on that you've just not been able to find to this point?
Well, all the popular titles are here. The games here are from the 70s to 1984, which represents the golden age of arcades. And, you know, so you'll have, you know, Pac-Man, Donkey Kong, Space Invaders, Frogger, the list goes on and on and on. So there's games that you'll know. There's a lot of uncommon games, and there's 9 games here in which there are less than 10 of in the world. So I just run the gambit of everything. But as far as games that I'm looking for that I don't have, you know, I kind of just, they find me now. I don't really seek. I don't really seek them out anymore. They just somehow find me. I don't know. But there's not one specific one that I'm looking for. But they made so many back then. So just, this is, even though there's a lot here, it's still the tip of the iceberg compared to what was released, you know, during those years.
Well, you've assembled quite a collection. Scott, if you can find a vintage 1990s Alpine racer game, I'll be there every weekend.
Oh. He's going to hold you to that, Scott.
Okay. Hey, I'll keep my eye out.
Aw.
Definitely.
Well, it was really cool to have you on our show, and I know that it's going to be very popular all around our area. So, Scott, thanks for being here. If you'd like to book your stay at his Airbnb, going back to the 80s throwback style, it'll cost you $260 a night regular. You can find more information on how to visit and spend the night at longlivetheeighties.com. I love that.